Derby Sands, folks. The weather is still looking good here at Djuma and Arathusa Game Reserves in South Africa, and we're very fortunate for that because it is the rainy season and we have been experiencing a lot of rain over the last few days, and you can tell this from the road up ahead of us. Even though it hasn't rained for about 24 hours, or considerable rain at that, there's still a lot of latent water lying around, which means off-roading for us in certain areas is a no-go. We will get stuck even in this incredible vehicle that tends to get us wherever we need to be. But we have had a lot of rain, and that's obviously great for the environment. It's much needed at this time of the year, the summer rains. And for now it's good. The bushes come alive. There's a lot of insects moving. Hopefully snakes will be moving. They certainly are moving, and they typically tend to move after the rain. You could imagine wherever they may have been bunkered down or hiding up may have got wet or saturated with water, and they'll move off in search of a new dry spot. And also, just to warm up, they'll be out in the sun trying to sun themselves. We saw a Mozambican spitting cobra yesterday afternoon. Myself and VM and Brian went on a little game drive around the Manuleti and had an interesting interaction. Sadly, the snake had already been run over, so we saw it in the middle of the road, got out to have a closer look, and it was still alive, but not in a good shape. So sadly, that was the scenario. But the snakes are moving, and that's something to look forward to because we don't get to show you snakes very often, and after rain is our highest chance of finding one. So let's carry on and see what we can do. We've got VM on camera this afternoon, so him and Brian have swapped roles. Brian's in control this afternoon, and we are initially setting out to do what I planned to do first thing this morning, and that was to follow up on a nest, a bird's nest. Now, we saw it about 5 days ago for the first time, roughly. And it'll be interesting to monitor the progress on the chicks. There were 4 chicks last time we saw them, and we have only seen the nest once. So looking forward to another look at it. I just need to try and remember exactly where it was, which is the catch. But I'm fairly certain we will be able to find it. It's around one of these corners on Shabam Road. And for those of you who were following this morning, you would know that we sat with 2 hippo bulls that were fighting. The intensity of the fight did get quite aggressive at points, but nothing too dramatic. And thankfully, with the waterhole camera that's permanently on that dam, we are keeping a tab on things, so if things do heat up there, we will plan to head there a little bit later on, or as soon as anything does happen. But for now, we thought we'd start by checking about for any other signs of life. We didn't do any traversing this morning, really. We basically went straight to the dam to watch the hippos and spent all 3 hours with them. Okay, I think I can see the tree that the nest was in after all this rain and wind and heavy storms. Let's hope everything's still in one piece. Uh-oh. Not looking good at the outset, folks. Now, just going to have a close look with my binoculars, but I'll direct VM into where the nest was, and I still think I can see a remnant of it, but keep zooming in and down towards the bottom left-hand side of the tree. A bit higher up and more to the left. More to the left. More to the left. More to the left. There it is there, right at the bottom of the screen, fairly center in the shot. You can see a small little cup there. Now I'm going to get my binoculars onto it. Oh no. This looks fairly tragic, folks. So It's right on the bottom left of the screen, Vim. It's just in frame, so if you just go, yeah, that's it there, that little kind of cup on the branch there. Now, it used to be bigger a few days ago, and it used to have 4 chicks in it as well. And at the moment, it looks like nothing's there. I'm gonna have a quick walk and have a look underneath the nest and see if there is any sign of them having fallen out. But I highly doubt that there is any further life, so that's very sad, folks. And sadly, due to the storm that we had over the last few days with very, very high winds in that small bowl, obviously there wasn't enough of a wall around them, and in the wind on those terminal branches they possibly just got flung out of the nest. So let me go and have a quick look. It is a few days after they in all likelihood fell out, but there could be some interesting sign of what happened there for us. I'm going to have a quick look. Well, sadly there was actually no sign of them in the nest as I got closer, which is what I thought even from this initial view that we've had, and no sign of them below the nest. If they had fallen out, there's so many different animals that would have fed on them, from little insects and beetles all the way up to larger predators that would have smelt them. Even a hyena walking past would smell that and gobble it up. But sadly all 4 of those chicks did die, and that is the environment we live in. It is harsh out here, and that's nature. That the death of those 4 little chicks would have provided meals for other animals, which may have been a turning point in their specific lives. But sadly for us and the southern white-crowned chick family, they are no longer. Okay, well, useful to know, but always sad to know that family didn't make it. The adults, I'm sure, are still okay. It was just those 4 little chicks that we saw. They did show us a great time, and we did have a great sighting of them. Just one sighting of them though, sadly. Okay. I was chatting to the camp manager's husband of Djuma a bit earlier, and he said they heard lion calling around quarantine clearings last night, and he emphasized that it was kind of the middle of the night as opposed to the early hours of the morning, so they could well have continued to move a long distance from there in that period of time. But we are going to factor that into our equation this afternoon and head onto that part of the reserve a little bit later to see if we have any luck following up on the lion. We have been looking for tracks since we've got out and haven't seen anything. Folks, if any of you joining for the first time, welcome on board. And to let you know, it's an interactive safari, so what's really interesting is that you can ask questions from wherever you are in the world. And to do that, you can do it on Twitter at #SafariLive or on email questions@wildearth.tv. So please send those questions through, and Brian, who's in control, will then try and filter them through to me. Mvula was also around yesterday afternoon. I mean, he could be a long way off from now, but he was around yesterday afternoon. Mark had a good sighting of him, which is great. I'm glad you guys got to see him. He's a very impressive, fully grown male leopard. The dominant male, or one of the dominant males that we do see in this area. So always good to see him, and we could bump into him at any stage because he has been moving in this general area. A lot of the game drive vehicles are all heading out now, well, and I'm hearing the updates on the radio as they get out, and they're all discussing with one another as to which routes they're going to take and which areas they'll check. So that's good news. We've got other eyes out there searching for animals. Beautiful shots of a Cape turtle dove calling here. It's a call we hear so often. So to show you the culprit for the noise you're hearing is always great, especially when the sunlight is on them so perfectly. There's another one calling off in the distance now that you can hear, and this one I'm sure will start up again shortly. Let's give it a minute or two and see if this one, oh, seemed to have some kind of a problem with his throat there. And it appears it is now preparing his plumage for the show that he's about to give us. The other bird call we could hear, the doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, that you would have heard, is an emerald spotted wood dove, so another kind of dove. We have the Cape turtle dove that we're looking at here, who I'm hoping is going to call for us. But in the meantime, we've got the emerald spotted wood dove calling in the distance, which is a beautiful call. Well, the sunlight that was shining so perfectly on this dove is now ducked behind a cloud. A long-tailed paradise wider flew through in the back of the shot there. I'm not sure if you got a glimpse of that small bird with a long thin tail. It's a bird that I personally haven't showed you, a long-tailed paradise wider, but hopefully we will be able to show you them. They're very pretty birds with an exceptionally long tail, as you would have noticed there potentially as it flew past. Well, this Cape turtle dove sure is making a fuss over his appearance, but I am happy to give it one more minute to see if we can get him to call. During these moments that we are parked listening to birds or looking at smaller, less high-profile animals, it does provide us with a great opportunity to listen to the bush. Without the vehicle running, we can hear for a fair distance, even in summer when there's a lot of foliage around. And if we were to hear any impala alarm calling or monkeys alarm calling, it would help direct us in towards where there could be potential predators. So it is good for us to stop every now and then and just soak in the sounds, as they do often provide us with useful clues. Well, if only we had the film on the emerald spotted wood dove. They are quite shy and secretive, because that is the one we can hear calling. It's a small dove, but very pretty. It has two small little emerald windows on its wings. But sadly, the Cape turtle dove that I was hoping to give us a good performance has not done so today, and has just taken off. So we shall continue. We are very close to a dam here, so let's have a close look. We are at Treehouse Dam. Good afternoon, Chris. Chris has just asked whether we have swifts and swallows here, and we do indeed. And we might see some flying over the water of this dam. That is quite a good place to see them around water sources. But as I look into the sky now, I cannot see one. They do come in waves, the swallows. So when we do see some, we'll try and show you. Sadly though, for filming, they fly so exceptionally quickly that they are difficult to film. But we can certainly try to show you some, Chris. And that they are difficult to film. But we can certainly try to show you some, Chris. And I know from my side I certainly haven't done that, so we will give the swifts and the swallows some airtime as soon as we can. But as I look around now, I cannot see one. Okay. Because there's so much latent water around in puddles and small wallows now after the rains, waterholes do become less productive, as the animals do just have so many choices as to where to drink or to wallow. So that is something bearing in mind after the heavy rains we've got. I wonder how many of the weaver birds that we're busy looking at had casualties during these heavy storms with the high winds. If any eggs or chicks did get blown out, they would have been gobbled up shortly by the terrapins and or the catfish that live in this dam. So again, the death of one animal may provide an important food source for another. Okay, well, let's continue. As beautiful as this scene is, we need a few more animals in frame, so let's see what we can find. Folks, I just got a message from Brian saying that there's a lot of interest as to what's going on with the two hippo that we saw fighting this morning. And just to recap, I did mention a little bit earlier, unless they start really going at it with one another, I don't think it's in our best interest to sit there waiting for things to escalate. We do have the waterhole camera, very fortunately, on that dam, and Brian is monitoring that. If things get excited and heated, we will rush there. But until that point, I think we should invest our time elsewhere. So that is what we are doing. And an update on them is that they are hardly fighting or interacting at the moment. It sounds like we did get the best of their show this morning. But that could certainly change, and if it does, if things do heat up, like I say, we will rush back there, because it isn't something that happens often. But at the moment, however, things are not really too serious, so we'll give them some time to get a little bit more riled up before we head there this afternoon. Come on, snakes. Where are you hiding? I really don't mind. Lara from Michigan on Twitter. Good afternoon, Lara. Welcome on board. Lara's asked how many or how far birds migrate to get to South Africa, and there's some that come from as far as Siberia, Mongolia, Korea. So many thousands of kilometers are traveled for birds to get here, and it does vary. Some of them can be small birds. They're not always big birds with big wings. There's sometimes small birds that do it. The birds that come from Mongolia and Siberia, various parts of those countries, Korea, are called ammo falcons, and these little falcons are in the area at the moment, but we haven't seen too many of them. I know I personally haven't showed you any, but they have arrived. They arrived about a couple of weeks ago, and you know, they're quite small, so that's interesting. We get white storks that come through. They nest on chimneys in Germany the other half of the year, and then come to Africa to unwind after their brooding period. So it does vary, Lara, on individual birds, how far they travel, but there are many that come from many thousands of kilometers away, some big, some small. Some even actually fly at night, interestingly, so they're nocturnal migrators. I think the woodlands kingfisher is one of those. So that's also kind of an interesting fact, that you wouldn't really assume birds would choose to fly at night, but some do. And the woodlands kingfisher, I think, is one of those. And this is the time to see the migratory birds, Lara, so that is the beauty of summer. The bird numbers do increase dramatically. And even the birds that are here permanently often boost their plumage for the breeding season, so the birds really are looking their best and they're most numerous at this time of the year. We've seen no tracks. The rain can have a negative impact on tracks on certain roads, like this road. Now this road, for example, is very sandy, and it's easier to see tracks on it when it's dry, because when it's wet it almost solidifies like a kind of a concrete and becomes very hard, so difficult to see any tracks on them. Whereas other kinds of roads, more muddy roads, less sandy roads, stay wet and sludgy, so if anything walks down them, it's very easy to see if they've walked down there. So sadly, this road that we're on isn't the best to see tracks on after the rains because it has solidified. But no tracks of any lions or leopards yet. That could well change at any second though. Or better than that, we could come around a corner and without even having to track the animal, it could simply be there, walking down the road towards us. That happened the other day with Karula, a very pleasant surprise. Karula's a female leopard who we see in this area, and she is believed to have cubs at the moment. We haven't seen them, but we know that she mated just over 3 months ago, so she should well have given birth now. It's about a 3-month gestation period for leopards. And judging by that extra flap of loose skin on her stomach when we did see her briefly the other day, I would put money on her having cubs, but when they're very small, they are exceptionally vulnerable, and she does keep them well hidden away. The next few weeks, though, we can hope for some glimpses of the youngsters, though. I haven't seen a leopard cub in years. Oh. Still a lot of water around, latent water. It's quite a nice view we should actually show you here. With the puddle in, and then also a beautiful vista that's now very clear from all the rain we've had. The air is crisp and clean. You can see some beautiful, beautiful scenery off in the distance. I mean, wow, look at that. A magical, magical place, this, the Lowveld of South Africa. It's incredibly beautiful here, and especially at this time of the year. And we have some swallows or swifts. They all look so similar, these birds, but if Viren just pans on top of the dam there, you might see them on this little pan here. They keep dashing over it. But they fly so quickly that it's going to be hard for him to get an ID on them. I've managed to have a few glimpses, and I'm going to get my book out now to confirm exactly who these are. Okay. They are difficult to distinguish, these swallows and swifts. But I think we have possibly a combination of swallows here. One could be a barn swallow, which migrates over 300 kilometers a day when it's on its way here. I mean, figure that one out, Lara. That's incredible. So they come across from the Arctic, over the Arctic to get here, and 300 kilometers a day. I mean, can you believe that? So these, I'm fairly certain, are barn swallows, but there could be some common house martins amongst them, which do look very similar. Possibly even a grey-rumped swallow. But they do fly so quick. I hope you have, yeah, you would have got some glimpses of them doing their thing. It's impossible, I think. Oh, there we go. Vim's doing a great job following them. So incredible flying birds, and what a vista to have them flying through. incredibly acrobatic birds. Wouldn't it be nice to fly like them? They're like little fighter planes. Okay, well folks, I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to handle this high-speed swallow filming. It's intense, but what a beautiful view we've had from here, and I'm glad we've got to show you some swallows, Chris. And I know it's not easy to see them, but you do get an idea of how well they can move, that's for certain. And the beautiful views that we can enjoy from here. This really is a magical setting, and a backdrop like this with an elephant in the foreground would certainly make a beautiful scene. So I think we should carry on and see if we can do that. What a beautiful spot. We should remember this for the sundowner hour, as the sun goes down, because a lot of the areas on Djuma are fairly low lying, so I often found myself not in the best position to show you guys the sunset, but this is a spot that I will certainly bring you to when the situation allows for it. So just to recap, we haven't had rain yet for 24 hours, but there is still water flowing down this road. Not very strongly, but it's flowing, so it just goes to show that there's a lot of latent water around. The earth is waterlogged, and that is wonderful. All these little mud wallows which are formed over the years are filled with water, and this will become bigger and bigger over time as time goes on, as more animals bathe in it. Just seeing my first interesting Dave in Toronto, good afternoon and welcome on board. Dave is asking if any of the trees in this area are edible, or fruits in this area are edible and or used for medicinal uses, and they certainly are. One that's about to start giving us some very tasty snacks is the marula tree, which I'm going to find a female of now because the males don't bear fruits. So I'm going to find a female for you and show you the fruits of the marula tree, because that is a very tasty fruit that we can feed on in this area and also make a beer out of. So that's a very tasty fruit. And also the tree itself is used, the gum from the tree is used as an antihistamine. If you get a bite or a sting, it's a very good antihistamine, the sap from these trees. But we appear to only be seeing males. This is a marula tree that we can see here, but it's a male. And I beg your pardon, it's a female. There's a few fruits on it, so if VM does zoom in, he will find a fruit somewhere in there. So VM's got a little treasure hunt opportunity here to look for a little marula berry. It's possibly not the best tree to have chosen to do this because the lighting's terrible. But there's one dangling right at the back center of the screen. If you carry on zooming in, you can see a little round ball just to the left of the vertical branch that comes down from the top of the screen. It's just a little bit higher up, unless you can see another one if you just go up a little bit more. There we go, just dangling there. We can see one fruit, a little round ball about the size of a golf ball. Like I said, this is probably not the best tree. It doesn't have too many fruits on, but it does have a steenbok below it, which we haven't seen for a while. So, but Dave, yes, a lot of these trees are used for feeding purposes. They're widely used by the local people here for both food and medicinal uses. A lot of traditional medicinal uses, as far as I'm aware, are not necessarily proven and would have been proven to work by now by modern medicine, because people are aware of their potential or believed capabilities, but a lot of them aren't actually very successful. Having said that, though, a lot of them are. So the antihistamine of this marula tree, which you can tap into from the bark, is one that does definitely work. And there are various other emetics that do help. The Bushman's fever tea is a nice one to make tea out of. So there are various ones that can be used. Beautiful bark on these marula trees. So I'm just actually going to switch off here. As VM takes you on a trip up the trunk of this tree. Distinctively mottled bark, greys, dark browns and dark greys to make up the bark of a marula tree. A fork in the road, VM. Where to go now? Ah, you're taking both routes. Nice. So yes, Dave, a lot of these trees are used medicinally, and when I see some that stand out as the more utilized or more beneficial medicinal plants, I will be sure to show you over the coming weeks. I do, to be honest, need to brush up on my knowledge, having not been here for a couple of years. I have got a little bit rusty on my medicinal uses of the plants in this area, but I'll be sure to do some reading up on that and get back to you with some other interesting trees and uses of them. Okay, where are all the animals hiding? Other than the steenbok, have we seen any other mammals, Vim?
Not really remember.
No. Just to recap, folks, that it is an interactional experience, this. So please send through questions at #SafariLive on Twitter and questions at wildearth.tv on email, and Brian will do his best to filter those through to me. So not too many mammals this afternoon, folks, yet. That can all change drastically, though. My plan is to carry on heading north. It does take us through some beautiful areas where I've seen a variety of different animals. So anything is possible then. What I'm hoping about the specific road we're taking is that it does take us along some beautiful higher ground, so we can show you more of the incredible vistas that we are experiencing at the moment after the heavy rains, and now the skies are clear and crisp. There's nothing quite as refreshing in my mind as crisp, cold water. That's what I've just been enjoying now. Even though we've had a lot of rain and it's cloudy, folks, it still is quite hot and humid. Thankfully today there's a decent breeze, but without this breeze we would be very clammy, despite the clouds protecting us from what can usually be a very, very powerful sun at this time of the year. Okay, some impala. Good. I thought everything had left us for a moment there. Okay. What a small herd of impala, just 3 females and a male that we could see, but again everything's just looking so crisp and clean and beautiful after this rain, and all the great food they've got access to this time of the year. They do really begin to look incredibly impressive, the antelope, not just the impala, the kudu. A lot of the herbivores take on a much better form and appearance over this period of the year. Now I wonder if anything's watching you licking their lips, impala, as you head into this little thicket. It has happened to me before, not often, that you are sitting here watching things like this thinking nothing too hectic is going to happen, and all of a sudden there's a leopard on top of one of them, or a lion chasing them from all directions. Wow, beautiful shot, VM. Look at how pretty these clouds are above us, folks. We need to find some subject matter with which to get in the foreground of these beautiful shots. So let's continue. I'm really hoping to try and capture a photograph of an elephant, ideally a big bull, in an open clearing with these beautiful clouds in the background from a low angle. I've had a shot in mind for a while now, but I just haven't had the opportunity to snap it off, so I'm looking forward to that opportunity, and maybe we'll get it this afternoon. Tim from Arkansas, good afternoon and welcome on board. Tim's asking what kind of wood the marula tree has. Is it a hardwood or a softwood? And it's not one of the harder woods we get in this area. It's actually a softer wood, the marula tree. So it could be similar to pine, I guess, as a relative tree that you may be aware of. But no, certainly not one of the harder woods from this area. The harder woods are the leadwoods and the combretum family, a lot of which are actually smaller trees, which we're driving past now. But if they are allowed to grow big, they do form beautiful, beautiful hardwoods. The elephants here tend to keep them down to a smaller size, but the marula isn't very good for furniture or anything of the sorts. Leadwoods are better used for that. And the other combretum trees in this area. Heather from the UK, good afternoon and welcome on board. Heather is following on with the snake subject that I did bring up earlier this afternoon on Drive. There is a strong chance of us finding snakes, or a stronger chance than any other time after rain, so a good time for us to hopefully bump into one. And Heather's asking which is the biggest snake I've ever encountered, and the biggest snake I've encountered is an African rock python, and the specific snake, well, the specific one that was the largest was probably 5.5 to 6 meters in length, so very long. I think that's about, what would it be in feet? I think Brian can try and help me with an exact conversion from meters to feet, but ooh. Well, there's a lot of birds making a racket in this tree, folks. So this may be the snake we are looking for. So 6 meters is 20 foot, and it was a 20-foot African rock python that I saw. And that was in Zululand. Northern Natal, an area north of where I live. Now folks, just give me a moment here to scan this tree. As you can see, it's very, very thick, but I do think that there could be a snake in here, so I'm just gonna get out and see what we can see. Whoa, that's what it was. Did you see that? Did you see that, Jim? Holy smokes.
That was thrown to me.
That was incredible, folks. There was an owl sitting right here. I think it could have been a barn owl or a grass owl. I'm not entirely sure. But that is what the small birds were making a racket about. It wasn't a snake. And I don't know where it took off from. It was somewhere right here. But that was cool. I hope you guys got to see that. I just saw this, I don't know what it was, figure flying out towards the camera. So Viam seems to think it almost flew into the camera, and I believe him. So wasn't that interesting? We didn't find a snake, we found another predator, but again, it's just such a good example of how looking at the smaller details and smaller signs from animals can lead you to bigger things. So Sheesh, that was interesting. I can't believe we didn't see that owl. There we are looking for a snake slithering through the tree, and there was a fairly decent sized owl that we couldn't even see. It is a very thick bush, this, the guarri bush that we're looking at, a magic guarri. And David, this is a tree that's used widely medicinally, the magic guarri tree. And I say used widely because it is used for a variety of different purposes, the magic guarri, but it is one of the most widely used plants medicinally. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the owls in the book and try and establish which owl it was that flew out of the tree. So I've got a feeling it could have been this individual here, the marsh owl. So it could have been that, or potentially the barn owl or African grass owl. I mean, it came out so quickly, you guys may have seen it better than me. But the African grass owl and or barn owl could have been the one. We do get both here. But wasn't that interesting, folks, seeing that bird fly out and nearly land on Wiem's head? He must have got a fright. I got a fright from the other side of the bush because it almost fell out of the tree, it looked like at one stage. Good. But back to the question regarding the biggest snake. It was, yeah, 20 feet in length, big python. It was probably about that fat. And interestingly enough, we followed her down into a termite mound, a hole in the termite mound, as she was lying out on a sunny termite mound. And as we arrived and started watching her, she started slithering into this hole. So we got out and watched her, and we looked into the hole and could actually see her incubating her eggs, which is really interesting. It's not common for snakes to incubate their eggs, but with pythons they do. And she lies around and shivers to keep them warm. So that's something very interesting with the pythons, that they incubate their eggs. And that was the first and last time I've seen a python incubating. So the biggest snake I've seen, and one of the most interesting sightings. Now these hornbills, I'm hoping are going to do their call for us. They have been doing it. So if VM stays, and then we make, oh, what are they doing? They're looking for food. They do nest at this time of the year. Let's keep watching. They do a very funny display with their wings when they do start calling, which I'm hoping they're going to show us. It's an incredible display, really comical. And aren't they looking beautiful, these hornbills? Possibly looking for nesting sites. They nest in cavities and trees. We've actually found one, not of the yellow-billed hornbill, which we're watching here, but of their cousin, the red-billed hornbill. We found a nest at Twin Dams, which we'll be showing you over the coming weeks. Come on, let off one more call for us. Yeah, it could well be a pair looking for somewhere to lay their eggs. Let's give it a moment or two here as they continue to explore this knobthorn tree. Beautiful. But there he is, hiding from VM. And they do have phenomenally large beaks, these hornbills, especially considering that they feed mainly on quite small prey items, although having said that, they can feed on prey as large as chameleons, but they typically are feeding on fairly small insects. But they sure do know how to use that beak of theirs, and they're giving us a good show here of how it can be used to clean their feathers. Okay, well, we're going to leave them to their preening and venture forth. There's a bird that I keep switching off for, and then I look around and it lands on the road just ahead of us. It looks like a cinnamon-breasted bunting. Really pretty bird. It's got an incredible pattern on its head as well as a beautifully cinnamon-colored breast that I tried to show the other day, but it also flitted off at the last moment. But we'll get one, and we will show you one. Oh, I think another one just took off from the road up ahead. Oh, there it is. Let's try and get it from here. There we go. It's just on this dead branch to the right of the road. Yeah. Although that looks to be... Oh, sorry, it's just flown into the road now. This isn't the prime candidate that we're looking for. This looks to be a female, but they still have those stripes on their head, but it's not as bold. The males have got a very black head and brighter coloration. These appear to be two females. Still very pretty birds though. I'll get the book out on them. We'll continue because they're a little bit far away, but what I would like to show you in the book is so that we can be ready to see them in the coming days, because they are around, both the cinnamon-breasted, which is what we were looking at here, but the female variety thereof. The males have got a more black-colored head and a brighter cinnamon chest, but the golden-breasted bunting just below, I mean, that's a serious character. Look at those colors. So that's another one to also look forward to in the coming weeks. Good. Well, the birds have been providing us with good entertainment, as they often do on drive. And when there are less big animals moving around, it does naturally flow that allows us to focus on them, and they provide us with great entertainment. So an important part of the safari experience is not just the big animals, but really whatever Mother Nature puts out in front of you to observe is what you've got to make the most of. So even if it's just the beautiful scenery and clouds around us, or lions hunting buffalo, it's typically never a bad situation to be in, regardless of what it may be. Okay. Brian in control, good afternoon sir, I hope you're behaving yourself there. Are there any updates on the hippos and how they might be behaving? Please sir. I'm sure Brian would have updated me if anything exciting has happened, but he says they're just doing a lot of huffing and puffing and nothing major in terms of combat, which they were getting fairly worked up about this morning, and that's why we did spend so much time with them, and the understanding that it could potentially really escalate to a full-blown battle, but it didn't quite get there this morning and doesn't appear to be getting any more intense this afternoon. Copy that message, Brian. Just waiting to try and get some in shot for that question, and then we will run with it. But thank you very much. Oh, so here we've got a rattling testicular. It was just chasing a mongoose, but again, its alarm calling caused me to look down and see a mongoose flash across the road. It has stopped, and it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to find it, but it may call again. It's a tiny little bird in this buffalo thorn. Oh, it just took off, but it appears to... It may let off one more alarm call as it continues to follow this. As it continues to follow this mongoose, but the mongoose appears like it may have hidden. Where to go now? What to do? What to do? Where to go? I'm inclined to actually turn around here. Just got a feeling that we're heading in the wrong direction. Why, I don't know. But we are going to head closer back towards quarantine clearings. It is such a productive area for us that we can't hide away from that fact. So we're going to spend some time closer to the lodge, and that is where we do get a lot of good sightings of quarantine, Kunyuma and Karula, 3 different leopards, a mother with her 2 sons. Those 2 sons are now independent, or in the process of learning how to be independent, as she's just given birth to another litter. There was a question earlier, I can't remember exactly who it was by, but it was on these black tufts that you can see on the back legs of these impala as they were running. So they're small little black tufts just above the hoof. And that was from Lee in South Africa. So we've got a South African on board, that's great. It's a lot of foreigners that usually follow us, so great to have a South African on board, and welcome Lee. And those little black tufts are scent glands. So as the impala run off and those quad muscles pump, a scent will be released from those glands and will be very useful in the impala finding one another and other members of the herd. They all leave trails as they may bombshell from one potential scary scene, and what that does is it leaves a network of mapping or roads that where all the animals would have run, and that would certainly allow them to relocate one another and regroup with the herd easier. So it is a relocation and scent gland that allows them to keep in touch with other herd members. Good question though, it is a unique scent gland that isn't found on all antelope, so well spotted, Lee, and glad that you brought that up and we got to show you that. It was quite nice that those two impala were running so that you could actually see them a bit more clearly, those black spots, because when they're standing in grass that's about 4 or 6 inches long, you don't get to actually see that black tuft. Just really is difficult, folks, finding animals if you haven't been out for a few days, which I haven't, because you do lose track of where animals are moving. And on top of that, with the rain that's washed away all the tracks and made a lot of the road substrates hard to see tracks on, I have not seen one track this afternoon to even point us in a vague direction of a predator. So we are driving around without too much knowledge or intel at the moment, and that really doesn't matter, because anything, we could come around any corner and something could be literally slap bang in the middle of the road. But it would be a little bit more reassuring as if we were following some tracks, knowing that an animal had certainly moved through an area within a fairly reasonable time frame. But sadly, so far, none of that. It doesn't bother me though, I'm just happy to be out after a few days of being stuck in after all the rain we've been getting. I can't wait to have a look at that footage of that owl coming out the tree. That's going to be great. So I wonder if one of you managed to get a screenshot of that. That would have been impressive. And for all of you that do screenshots, folks, of any of the sightings we're in and seeing and experiencing, thanks so much, because it is great to have a look through the drive from your perspective immediately afterwards on Twitter. So thank you for those screenshots, and myself and VM and Brian and Mark and Jason and Alex are all on Twitter, so have a look for us. From Lysa, I'm not sure where you're sending the message from, sorry, I've already forgot, but thanks for acknowledging the fact that we did show some female birds from Finland or Poland. Sorry, I am a culprit of not showing enough female birds, so I will make an effort of showing more of the females, because they do often look different. So for IDing purposes, it is nice for people to know what the females look like, and I will continue to show you a few more females, but thanks Lysa for acknowledging that. folks, I'm just going to have a quick chat on the Game Drive channel. I will switch off before we do this the vehicle, because apparently it helps not cause the system to crash, but the system may well crash, so bear with us if it does. It won't be for long. Could I please get an update on which property the skunk is on? That's which property the skunk is on, please. Okay, copy, thanks. Okay. Well, for lack of better ideas, folks, I think we should head on down to Twin Dams and have a look at the hornbill nest we saw the other day, because I have yet to show you that, and I've got no other tricks up my sleeve this afternoon. Obviously, between now and then, getting there, it's a few miles to get there. Hopefully something exciting will happen. But if not, we'll have the excitement of seeing the hornbill come back. In all likelihood, it's just the male at the moment who's leaving to collect food to bring back to the nest to feed the female. But I shall explain everything when we get there. She will be enclosed in a nest, though, in a cavity in a tree. We won't actually get to see her, but we will see the male coming in to deposit food through a little gap to her. John in New Jersey, good afternoon, welcome on board, John. And John is asking whether I think we'll get any rain this afternoon during the drive. And at this stage, I think we're in the clear. We've got about 2 hours and, an hour and 45 minutes left. And I don't think so. It could well change though later on this evening. But at the moment we're looking clear, which is great news. So that is something I'm very happy about. I thought we would certainly get a little bit of rain today, and we haven't had any, which is wonderful. So no, I don't think we are going to get any rain. Hopefully I'm not going to be proved wrong. And hopefully for the next few days you don't have any. The environment's got enough for now. We can have a few hot and sunny days. Will suit us perfectly before the next rain. Copy that, Brian. Got to be careful driving through all these little puddles in the road. It's incredible how quickly terrapins move between different water sources and inhabit these little puddles in the road. So they can be really, really small baby terrapins. So you just need to make sure we don't squash any as we go through the puddles. Sorry, I'm just listening to the Game Drive channel. I thought I heard some exciting news, but it wasn't. False alarm. We've just got a question through from Veronique in France asking what the temperature's like, and at the moment it's probably 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, I'm guessing. I'm not sure what that converts to in Fahrenheit, but about 20 degrees Celsius. And it's nice and cool today, but it is our summer. Veronique said it can get very, very hot and humid in this area, but today it's cool, not too hot or sweaty, which it can be. And what I've just noticed up ahead of us is some lion tracks on the road. It is difficult for you to see from this angle, but there's one there, and if he pans a little bit further, oh, those are even harder to see. But a lion did walk down this road last night, folks, so we shall continue. Sadly, we are quite close to our boundary, and I actually tracked a male lion down the same road the other day for a few miles, and he just went straight out of the property that he can traverse. Let's hope the same thing doesn't happen, but I think they do. I can see also other vehicle tracks from where a Game Drive vehicle would have driven down here this morning, and they've got trackers on the vehicle, so I'm sure they track these lions out of our property. Otherwise I would have got some kind of an update on the radio that they were here by now. It's like potentially 2 individuals at least, but maybe more. Okay, this is the first time I've seen this little stream flowing. This is nice. It's not flowing very strongly, but it is flowing. This is usually just a sandy riverbed that we're looking at here, but at the moment it's flowing. Not very strongly, but flowing nonetheless. Not easy to find animals in this thick bush, folks. I'm not sure if you saw the other day, myself and Vic were out together, just we are now, but we were out in the morning and we were following tracks. So it was actually the same morning that I tracked this male lion down this road and he crossed out the property like I mentioned a bit earlier. We were following tracks of a male leopard and I was kind of torn between whether to follow them or whether not to follow them, because it is a difficult thing following tracks, and we'd already followed 2 different sets unsuccessfully, one of a lion, one of a leopard. And then the third set of tracks popped up, another leopard, so we followed them for a short while and we got to a small little riverbed and I said I was just going to get out the vehicle and check for any further tracks as we walked down this riverbed. And he was literally lying 3 meters from the vehicle and he shot off. He got a fright as I got out the vehicle. But literally 3 meters from the vehicle, we knew that his tracks were heading in that direction. We knew we were looking for a leopard. And even still, 3 meters away, we didn't see him. So thankfully, we don't get any updates or messages as to how close we drove past any animals by, because I'm sure on a daily basis we drive within close proximity of the animals that we spend so many hours searching for. Got a private escort here. It's Natal Franklin leading us down the road. Oh, just veered off. Short escorts. The lion tracks do appear to continue heading down this road, but not very easy to see. I think a lot of them were washed away from rain. Just want to have a quick look in this riverbed. Rest back out and continue down towards the dam. I want to have a quick look at the state of this river. Flowed a little bit. Not as much as I would have hoped it to have flown. Kiddo. A question just come through from Brian asking if there's any Varro's eagles, pairs of Varro's eagles in the vicinity, and sadly not. Haven't seen any Varro's eagles since I've been here. We've got a pair at Manyeleti where we stay that we hear occasionally at night and have seen once or twice, but sadly here I've yet to find a pair. There could well be a pair that live along this watercourse in the big trees, but I've yet to see one. Beautiful, beautiful birds though. Okay, well, we have arrived at the hornbill nest. So now what we've got to do is wait for, what a beautiful tree for them to have chosen to nest in, this beautiful big leadwood tree. And VM knows exactly where the crevice is in this tree where the female is hiding out, incubating the chicks, or potentially even help raise them now for a few days. And we sat here for about half an hour when we did first find the nest, and the way we found it is we saw an adult flying with a kill, and when adults fly around with kills, it's in all likelihood flying them back to a nesting site. It wouldn't make sense for them to fly around with food that could be stolen by another animal. They'd rather gobble it up immediately, unless of course they are nesting. Now in this crack just to the left of the prominently white bark, you can see a small hole, and in that hole is where the male deposits the kills, the little insects or food that he brings to the female. We're not sure exactly where. You can see what looks to be two holes, and she could well have entered a hole into the cavity there and blocked that whole hole up with excrements, that way completely encasing herself in the cavity, leaving a small gap just to receive food. And it's really incredible. She'll be in there for a month. She'll do a full feather molt, help incubate the chicks for about 2 weeks, then raise the chicks for 2 weeks, break out of the nest, and then once she's broken out, she'll help the male in feeding the remaining chicks, or the chicks that remain in the nest, for a few more weeks before they fledge. And who would have thought that that's all going on right in there? Now, hopefully, the male will be back. We noticed that it usually comes back every about 10 minutes or so, but that obviously depends greatly on what food he has around, or what hunting opportunities he has around. So,
Here he comes.
oh, here he comes. VM can see him. Here he is. So VM's going to stay on the crack that he's in all likelihood going to fly to. He does have a kill in his beak, but I don't want to risk him VM panning across to the hornbill now. It looks like a nice sizey prey. Here he comes. Here he comes. Wow, look at that. That was awesome. We didn't even have to wait very long. And I'm hoping you would have picked up that audio of the female squawking with joy as he deposited that kill in there, and he's off to go get another one. I really enjoyed that, folks. I could almost sit here and wait for him to do another one. What a great view we've got, and who would have thought that there'd be a bird nesting in that small crevice? It really is interesting. And the whole behavior that they go through and the whole process that they go through while they're in that cavity is also hard to believe, that she'll lose all her feathers, regain a new set, incubate chicks, raise chicks, break out, feed the chicks, and then their job as parents will be done. But really, really cool that we got to see that. And let's, out of interest, see how long it takes him to bring back another kill, because last time we waited it took him 10 minutes roughly. So I've got my stopwatch checked and we are timing how long it takes back to get back. What would be ideal now is if we could focus on him, or have a portable camera on him hunting, how far he goes away, what exactly he manages to catch. And thankfully with this individual, he's quite relaxed with our presence. I saw a hornbill the other day, and I did mention that it could well have a nest. It was flying around with a kill, but it simply wouldn't take us to the nest, and it sat with the kill in its beak for a long period of time until it actually flew off. So I think it was trying to hide from us the location of its nest, which does make sense. Oh, here he comes back again already. Let's get ready, folks. Here he comes with another kill. Awesome. Well, get ready. He's about to fly across to that nest, so let's see if Vim can swoop across in time. There goes. Oh, wonderful. Good work, Vim. So this is a red-billed hornbill, folks, and that took him probably no longer than 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to get that second kill into the nest. So some high intensity feeding going on here. The hornbills are massacring the insects this afternoon in the low veld. And I think that's enough for now. They are going to be here for a couple of weeks. I'm guessing. We don't know how far they are into the nesting process. And who knows, maybe, I'm assuming that it's just the male that's feeding. It could be both the male and female who are feeding the chicks only now. They may already be at that process of the nesting. And that may have been 2 different hornbills, 1 male, 1 female, coming back to feed the chicks. Good, so I think we will continue. We've got some great action out of those 2 hornbills. A lucky find the other day. I really do love following birds' nests. Brian was with us on that exploratory mission. We went out, the morning drive had been cancelled because it was heavy rain, and we went out in the midday when it had stopped raining in the hope that we would get some knowledge as to what's been out there. And we did establish that that nest was there, but then that afternoon we were on drive for about 5 minutes before we got caught in a monsoon. So I hope Brian enjoyed that from in the final control. He was a part of the team that found that nest. Oh, here we can see the hornbill hunting. I'm pretty sure this will be the same one. And now we can see it hunting. So it did fly off in this direction, and we can go from seeing them feeding, reversing it back a bit to seeing how they actually get their food. Isn't that a bonus? And you can actually even see the mud and excrement. Try zoom right in on his beak. You'll notice his beak's a bit of an offish color, and that's from him sliding it into that small crack that the female would have filled up the cavity with excrements to make sure it's just a thin slit that he can slide his beak into. And that's why you can see there's that offish muddy color towards the thicker part of the beak. And isn't that interesting that you can tell that he has been feeding, or potentially she. Oh, there we go, that's one. Is that for himself or is that for the nest? Let's see what he does. But he's, yeah, flying straight back to the nest, that big leadwood tree. Well done, Vim. There we go. That's we were sitting just below that branch. He often lands on that branch you can see him on now, and then he'll fly up to the right now, where the main trunk of the tree is, where that cavity is in their nest. So let's watch him just fly up to the right of the screen. There he goes. Wonderful. Well, hornbills feeding, hornbills hunting. We're having a good afternoon with the hornbills. Nicholas from Portland, good afternoon and welcome on board. Nicholas is asking whether we can see vultures here, and we certainly can see vultures, and he wanted to know specifically if we could see the Egyptian vulture here, and sadly the Egyptian vulture is highly threatened and endangered, and I've never even seen one in my whole career, let alone one here, so we sadly can't see them here that I know of. But we do get other vultures. There's 4 species that we could likely see here. The lappet-faced, which is the biggest, the white-backed Cape Griffon and hooded vultures are 4 that we can see here. And if you do follow us closely, you will see some great vulture footage over the time. We actually captured some great stuff of about 30 or 40 vultures swooping down onto a buffalo kill that had been abandoned by lions the other day, and that was really cool entertainment to watch. So ideally we do need a big kill though for them to come in numbers, and that does happen from time to time and we do get to view them, but at the moment there are not many around, as in today right now. And a few reasons for that: when it's overcast it makes difficult flying conditions for raptors because there's less thermals, less hot thermals for them to ride, so they are less mobile in cloudy, cool conditions than when it's hot and sunny. Copy that, thank you, Brian. Oh, come on, animals. Okay, copy that, thanks Brian. I think I am going to slowly make my way back in that direction. There is word that the hippo are getting a little bit more worked up and excited about whatever they were getting excited about this morning, but they have been fighting 2 hippo bulls, folks, to recap. For those of you who have just joined or weren't with us this morning. So they are apparently beginning to get a little bit more worked up and aggressive as they were earlier this morning, but tended to kind of calm down a little bit during the middle of the day. And we may get some great interaction between these 2 big bulls fighting. So we will make our way there slowly. Afternoon, go ahead. I've done the kind of western half as well as Twin Dams Treehouse. Now I'm on Cheetah Cut line. Sorry, my radio keeps breaking up. The hippo bulls that were fighting again. No, nothing too hectic, but might be interesting to you. Sorry, go again. I actually didn't go onto it this morning. Good. So folks, just giving an update there to Craig, one of the other guides in the area. Copy that, thanks Brian. It seems like the hippo fight is increasing in intensity, so I'm going to increase the speed a little bit and try and get us there as soon as possible. The dam wall just is very slippery after all this rain, and you don't want to slip down there. So just trying to work out which route will be the quickest for us to get there. And I'm not entirely sure which route that is yet, but I will probably take Central Road, which is the next road we can go down, and see what happens thereafter. Or is this Mumba Road? Either way, we're heading in the right direction. This is Mumba Road, I think. Oh no, it is Central Road. Or am I dreaming? Either way, we're heading in the right direction, and that is all that matters. Oh, these roads, just from the little bit of rain that we've got, have already taken a bit of a pounding. They do form little rivers, and the erosion is quite extensive. So a lot of work is required on these roads to maintain them. Okay. Well, I'm glad that the hippos have finally started to finish off the business they started the morning, because it is fairly quiet out here, and I was wondering where we were going to go next, what we were going to do. So thankfully the hippos have stood up for us and should be providing us with some entertainment shortly. these small bumps that we have to slow down for are placed on these roads to prevent water flowing down them and gaining too much momentum, and they are channeled off to the sides, and this does help prevent erosion, and it also helps prevent us from going too quickly, but that is not the reason why they are there. Brian, I'm not sure if open transmission, but I did just mention these speed bumps were for rain, so I'm not sure if you did copy that, but Kathleen has just asked what these speed bumps are we're going over. Kathleen, like I just said, they are not speed bumps. They're to prevent water flow gaining too much momentum and washing these roads away completely, and it channels them off to the sides, preventing erosion. But they do double up as a speed bump indirectly. There's a little terrapin in the puddle we'll try and show you, and I said we do need to keep an eye out for when going through these puddles. Is it still there, Vim?
It's out of grass.
Did it crawl out the puddle?
Yeah.
Off the road or into the road?
It's in the grass.
In the middle of the road or off the road? Left of the road. Okay. Oh, there was a little... You see it?
Yeah, it's in the grass.
Well, we will continue, but there was a terrapin in that tiny little puddle that we just needed to avoid. Okay, well, a little bit of increase in speed and action at the moment. We've been driving on very slowly this afternoon, which is most enjoyable, but it is nice to also pick up the speed. Every now and then. Excuse me, bless me. I think a bug just flew up my nose and has induced me to have a little sneeze there. My nose is still quite ticklish, so it could still be up there, whatever it is. Excuse me. lot of insects around after the rains, and it's incredible to see. Just a few days after rain, the insect numbers will decrease greatly. A lot of them are only alive and active for very short periods of time. At the moment there are plenty around, that's for sure. So if you really don't like bugs, it's not the time of year to come on safari to South Africa. Winter would be your best opportunity because there's a lot less bugs around. Okay, we are not far from the dam, and let's hope these hippos have got a show for us. Okay. What will the... Okay, they are certainly at it. So, that was good. I just had a glimpse of them clashing teeth with one another. Okay, well, welcome to Vuyatilla Dam, folks, and sorry it was a bit of a bumpy ride to get you, but these two hippo bulls are fighting, and let's just give them some time and give ourselves some time to establish how intently they are exactly fighting at the moment. According to what the webcam was providing us with information was that they did tend to calm down to a degree during the day and are now getting a little bit more worked up. They'll be getting hungry now. It's time to go out and feed shortly, but these guys may have their agenda filled with some slightly different plans, and that is fighting over this prime piece of territory. And what is going to happen next? Ooh. Just from that one little attack there, I noticed that one's mouth seemed a lot more bloodied than it was this morning. So obviously the few fights they have had this afternoon have been quite intense. And those little cuts in their mouths will be starting to get sore and bigger, and that will also increase the intensity of the fighting we do witness. So we have got some great possible action lined up here. I mean, it could be that one does manage to get one really in a tight spot, and they can cause a lot of damage to one another when they do get to this stage of a fight, but only time will tell. From watching this morning, folks, we can tell that there is a way of distinguishing between the two. The one has a notch on its right ear, and that is the one on the, I can't tell at this stage, but we will keep you updated. But one does have a very distinctive notch in its right ear, which helps to establish who's who, so keep an eye out for that. And also bear in mind that they do have little breaks, just as boxers would do between rounds. They kind of have little breaks where they regain their breath and their energy levels and then come charging in again. Go ahead. That update, do you know whereabouts? I'll wait for you to take it from there. Such an awesome vocalization, that. And we didn't hear many vocalizations this morning, which was also interesting. It is increasing. It appears not only their fighting is getting more intense, but also their vocalization, and I'm sure their dominance displays will start beginning to increase as the evening progresses. Madeline on Twitter, good afternoon and welcome on board. A similar question that came through this morning was asking whether hippos fight underwater, and I think they do to a small degree through default, but it's typically above the ground or above the water that they fight, and that's because if they were to open their mouths and be trying to bite one another as they do under the water, I think a lot of water would go down their throats. So I think the majority of water does happen above the surface, and especially the point of the fight where one manages to start chasing one out of the water that they're fighting over. That's when the damage can start getting really big, because they can move a lot faster outside of the water, and they can therefore create more damage and cause more damage to one another when they are out the water. So I think out the water and with their heads above the water is the majority of the fighting. When we don't see them doing anything now, they're not continuing to fight underwater. If they were, we'd be seeing a lot of movements of water, but they simply, I think, letting their hearts rest a little bit, regaining their breath before clashing again when they are underwater like this. So that's that, and I hope that answers your question, Madeline, but it is a good one, and it would be interesting to see them fighting underwater. It certainly would, but sadly we've got no access to prove that. But like I say, from the fact that we don't see any turbulence or movements in the water, we can assume that they don't. Okay, Viam's found a heron that's coming into land, and he's doing a great job showing it to you. He's got his work cut out for him now though, as it gets closer, but he's handling it. And it is quite windy, so the heron's also got an interesting landing up ahead, but it seems to be doing well. It's got the landing gear out. Awesome, look at this footage. Well done, Viam. And as easy as that. Great shots. That was awesome. And we did watch not necessarily this heron, but a similar heron this morning, also a grey heron, hunting on the opposite bank just away from us there. It was hunting small little other fish or tadpoles. We're not sure which one, but maybe it's back for a little bit of an evening hunt, and wouldn't that be nice to switch between the heron hunting and the hippo fighting? So we have a small clash as we arrived here, and things seem to have calmed down. I don't know if we're a calming influence. I doubt it, but we did spend 3 hours with them this morning, and at 2 points this morning, one individual, and I think they each got a turn of chasing one completely out the water, and that's quite a big step because they've managed to turn one, overpower it, and get it running away. And on 2 different intervals they were out of the water, and for some reason, I'm not too sure, the victor of that specific round didn't continue to chase the loser away, and therefore we're still in the situation here with them trying to establish who's stronger than who, and who's going to stake claim to this land, or this pond. But what we did also learn this morning is that it does come in waves, and evidently now they're in a bit of a breather. The Egyptian goose family, the chicks are growing really quickly. They've probably more than doubled in size, close to tripled in size since we've first started viewing them. And interestingly, with ducks and a lot of ground feeding birds like these, ducks and chickens, they can feed themselves from the day they're born, unlike other birds who nest up in trees and rely on being fed by their mothers. So they are growing quickly, the Egyptian geese, and incredibly good parenting because they haven't lost one of the chicks so far. Oh, what have we got here? This looks like a lappet-faced vulture. It's a huge vulture, and it's going to be very difficult for them to film because it's directly behind the vehicle now and actually out of sight. But it was a very large vulture, and there was chat about vultures earlier this afternoon and which types we get here. And this is actually one that I forgot about because I haven't seen one for a while. But that indeed was a white-headed vulture flying behind us. Sadly, we didn't get to show you, but I can show you now, and it is one of the larger vultures in this area. And I haven't seen one since we've been here. They're not very common. But one of these just flew past in the distance, the white-headed vulture. The lappet-faced are the biggest, and then Cape and whitebacked are very similar sizes, with the hooded being the smallest. So these are the 5 species of vulture that we get here in the Kruger. Come on, hippos. We may have something else that's quite an interesting prospect for us to try and get to. There is word of Karula heading towards one of our boundaries, which will therefore allow us to view her. And we're just waiting, hoping that she does continue to make her way towards our property. And I'm just listening to the radio, getting informed on her movements, but it may be so we're just going to wait and listen to the radio and keep updated. Sorry, that's why I keep stopping to listen to the radio that's in this earpiece. There's quite a lot of chat around. There's also a cheetah that's been seen, but again, not on our property. But it is in the area, so good prospects for tomorrow. Cheetah are very rare in this area, so great that there is one around. And who knows, hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to show you one. We have yet to show you one since we have been broadcasting this WildEarth stint. Cindy is asking how old, afternoon Cindy, and welcome on board. Cindy is asking how old do hippo live for, and that would vary greatly in the wild, but up to 40 years is an age that I've been told. I've sadly haven't followed one from start to finish, but around 40 years is an age that I've been told that they can live to, and you can kind of add 10 years to either side of that, just as you can with humans. So around 40 years of age, and they will become very bold in these territorial disputes, and they will fight almost to the death, not necessarily that they would inflict wounds that would kill one another there and then, but definitely wounds that would become fatal over time as they may become infected or what's the word? Disable the animal to and therefore cause that damage. And that could change in time. As one becomes stronger or less tired than the other, it could possibly overpower the one and then start creating some damage, but we haven't got to that stage yet. Just got a message from Russell asking if these animals will head out this evening to feed, and they in all likelihood will, but I don't know how preoccupied they are going to be with fighting. At the moment it doesn't seem like fighting is doesn't seem like a huge fight we're experiencing at the moment, but it does increase in intensity as time goes on, so it does vary greatly. But there are some helmeted guinea fowl coming down to the water's edge, which would be nice to see. They do run up and down at this time of the evening, chasing one another, bonding with one another before they head up into the trees to roost. And they move at incredible bursts of speed, as you will shortly see. So sadly, folks, just to keep you in the loop of Karula's movements, she was heading north towards us, and now she's changed her direction and started heading east, which doesn't bring us to her towards us. But that could all change, but I just thought I would keep you in the loop as to the likelihood of seeing her. But there's a chance, and that's great. There are other game viewers with her now and keeping an eye on her, and if she does cross over onto our property, we'll be informed, and then we can race across there. But until then, we will just wait for these hippos who have been fighting, I promise you. As we arrived, they were clashing teeth for a little bit, and this morning for 3 hours we spent with them. But again, it must be made clear that this fighting hasn't got to a stage where it's the be-all and end-all for either one of these hippos. They are still kind of building up to that stage, I guess. And for me, it's difficult to tell exactly. Events like this happen rarely and will always be different between different animals and different individual events. So difficult to say exactly how a hippo fight will turn out, because it's exactly the same as saying how will a fight between two humans turn out. There's a long list of possibilities in which a fight could finish. Kim on email is asking, afternoon Kim and welcome on board, is asking where the, hold on one second. It's just a catfish that I can see swimming along the surface, taking gulps of water. I thought it was potentially a snake. The question was, have the female hippo and calves moved out of here? And yes, they have moved out. So I'm not sure where they've gone. There are other dams around here where they could be, and they all will in all likelihood come back once this dispute has been resolved or established whose dominance. They may come back in the interim only to find that it is still going on, and therefore they have to move to another place. But it will be interesting to see how many days it takes for them to establish who's boss between the two of them. And once one does do that, then how long it'll take for the individual to be alone before females do come back. But that we will be able to monitor, Kim, and it will be interesting to see what happens. But I'm sure they will return after a few days, possibly even tomorrow if this fight's resolved this evening. You see all those catfish feeding there, Viam?
Where?
To the left of the hippo. Go to the left and zoom in. A bit more left. Somewhere in around there. Zoom in, yeah. Yeah, are you on one there? Are you zoomed in fully?
Yep.
It's very difficult to see at the moment, but they are. Oh, there's lots of them now. Look at all of them. Look at all of those catfish, folks. Crazy. There are so many of them putting their mouths up there. The water's literally bubbling. VM to zoom in as much as he can. You can't get a perspective of how many of them are doing this. But they literally all simultaneously have started this kind of breathing, it appears, on the surface, and it is something we have seen before, and we do know that they can breathe in oxygen like that and process it. Unlike most other fish, they can survive on land for hours being out of the water, these catfish. And just interesting to see this behavior that they have all started simultaneously raising their little mouths up to the surface. It's not something they do often. These will be big fish, probably 2-3 feet at least in length, these catfish. Some of them up to 4 or 5 feet, I'm sure, in this dam. I'm very surprised at how long it's been since the hippo's last interaction, because when we were here this morning it was fairly constant to a degree, the backwards and forwards, and then actual clashes would happen probably every 10 minutes or so, every 10-15 minutes. But now it appears that all is peaceful at Gowrie Dam. What would be interesting, or what is an interesting thought, is that if we didn't have this webcam here informing us that these hippos were fighting this morning, you could drive past here, spend 5 minutes here, think everything's completely normal and carry on, and not know that these hippos were having a dispute or are having a dispute. So again, important just to emphasize how important it is for us to take our time and really try and understand animals and give sightings time to unfold, rather than rushing from A to B. A few people have been asking whether these catfish could be eating the dung of the hippos. Yes, they could. They do scavenge whatever they can, these catfish. They've got a wide diet, but they are mainly carnivorous catfish. That's not to say they won't feed on... Let's get these guinea fowl quickly. They're doing a nice show for us here. We've got a little helmeted guinea fowl parade. They were really running and jumping and getting a bit worked up, which they may continue to do as they feed along the fringe of the water. But yes, the catfish could be feeding on any excrement from the hippo, or anything that they kick up as they move the hippos. But at the moment, I don't think they are feeding. They are actually obtaining oxygen at the moment, filling up their systems with oxygen. And that's understandable. I'm not sure how much oxygen is generated in this waterhole. It's very muddy, no plants really in it. Okay, VM, I've got your next job cut out for you. I don't know if it's going to do it again, but you see that woodlands kingfisher sitting on the left-hand side of that overhanging tree there? Oh! Okay, well, that was the one that just flew off. It had flown down into the water to get wet to have a bath, and I was hoping it was going to do it again and see if you could capture it flying into the water. There is another one that is perched in there, though, that may do the same thing. But it's a gamble. So, and I can't actually see it, which is going to make it very difficult for you, because you don't know where it's going to be starting from as it plummets down. Bob from Iowa. Good afternoon, Bob, and welcome on board. Bob's asking whether if a female hippo arrived in the scenario we're in now, what would happen? And wouldn't it be great to find out, to throw a few females into the mix here? It's hard to tell. Like I say, we so seldom get to see this kind of interaction. But if I was to put money on something happening, it would certainly increase if there was a female here, if we did bring a female in. I think it would certainly increase the intensity of these males. So yes, I think the answer is yes to that question, Bob, that they would increase the intensity of their fight, or their so-called fight. But I wouldn't be able to guarantee that, and who knows, maybe they'll chase her out. I don't know, but they certainly are worked up and potentially going to act irrationally, but what exactly they'll do would be hard to tell. We are sitting right below a red-billed buffalo's weaver's nest, and that would be the origin of all the birds tweeting that you can hear around us. There sounds like there are some baby chicks in this nest that are tweeting for their mothers to feed them, but hard for us to be sure that there are chicks in there, because it's a very thick myriad of twigs that they bunch together and create small apartments within these big clumps of nests. So the nest within the nest, not on top of it. Okay, hippos, well, we veered off track drastically to get you to watch you guys doing your thing, and now you're doing close to nothing. Again, folks, it is just so hard to determine what the best course of action is from here. But we will spend a few more minutes here. Got another game view arriving onto the dam, so they will hopefully bring us some luck with regards to these hippos and their movements. Okay, well, the family of geese are on the move again across the water, which is always cool to watch, bobbing along with one adult at the back and one in the front. Let's see if these hippos don't get worked up. It was so funny this morning. They were just about where they are now, and the hippos started fighting, and they rushed back to the side of the dam. And when the chicks do get close toward the edge, they get really excited to be getting back to land, and I think we're going to get spoiled with an incredible shot here if they do continue straight towards us, because they get so excited as they get close by the water's edge. Beautiful, beautiful birds, the Egyptian geese. Bobbing along from side to side. Oh, here they go. Here they go. They're getting excited to get onto the bank again. Here they go, one last little surge. And no. Okay folks, well, as much as I do love this dam, and I do love watching hippos fight, at the moment the hippos aren't fighting, and I am getting a little bit restless, so I think it may be in our best interest to continue and look for something else. VM, are you happy to go look for something else? That's the old nod of the cameraman that you saw there. So, again, we're not going to be able to get too far from here now, but we will come back if things get any more heated up. But at the moment, this is fairly tranquil in terms of hippos fighting, so we will continue. Okay. Well, I'm glad we did get to see at least a tiny little bit of this confrontation that these hippos have been having with one another. Certainly better than nothing. We need to let those two get a little bit more worked up with one another before we spend more time with them. So again folks, just to keep you in the loop with what's going on with Karula, she was last seen heading east in quite thick bush, fairly close to our boundary, but not quite close enough to warrant us going there to look for her yet. There are other vehicles that are in that area, so we will leave them to that, but she sadly did veer off the initial course, which was bringing us straight towards our property. Question from Will on Twitter as to how long we think the goslings will stay with their parents. I would say at least another 2 months. They'll probably stay with their parents and then start. Kim on Twitter. So yeah, possibly another 2 or 3 months before they head off and do their own thing. But they do still have quite a lot of growing to get through before their parents will expect them to look after themselves. I think definitely long after we've gone from here, they'll still be together. We've only got about another month to go of broadcasting from Juma, unless there's a change in plans, but at this stage it's 1 more month of filming here, and then we all head off in our different ways. I'm not sure which way that'll be exactly for myself, but something will pop up and we'll work it out what to do next. I might try and base myself in a city and work in the bush when I do find the appropriate work that I'm looking for. That way I spend a couple of weeks in the bush every month and then a couple of weeks in the city, which is what I am striving to get to as a goal, because to live in the bush permanently, it is difficult when it comes to relationships and families and friends. So thankfully, with travel being so easy in this day and age, you can base yourself in a city and still work in the bush when you've got safaris, clients out on safari, or any good jobs that pop up. So potentially I'll be based in Cape Town next year, which is a beautiful city in South Africa, and if you do come to South Africa, it is certainly worth making some time to go to Cape Town. If you do go to any of the cities in South Africa, Cape Town would be the one I suggest you go to first. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. But sadly, only 1 more month here, and I think those goslings will still be here once we're gone. It'll be nice though, because you will still be able to view them from the waterhole cam, the live cam at the waterhole. You won't need us to view those Egyptian geese. Thank you for that update, Brian. Brian, what I'm going to plan to try and do is to try and finish close to the Gowrie repeater. That way we can switch it off and then head back afterwards to save us a little bit of time this evening. Due to the fact that it has been cloudy, here for the last few days, some of the antennas, which are solar powered, that we're allowed to broadcast, obviously haven't been getting very well charged, so it's important for us to turn them off when we're not transmitting or trying to broadcast. So just making a plan with Brian to get that done as we close down, that we're close to there. Otherwise it is a little bit of a mission for us, on top of the journey that we already undertake back to camp every evening. There might be time for us to quickly go and check out the hyena den site. It hasn't been active the last few times we've been there, but it has been a while since I've been. I'm not sure when last Mark was there. getting quite cold over here. Hey? Yes, it is a bit chilly all of a sudden. I think I may need to stop and get out my little jacket. Or maybe we can wait till we get to the hyena. Beautiful, beautiful, cool evening though. It really is uncommon to have a cool evening at this time of the year. So we are enjoying it. Well, folks, would you believe that 2014 is coming to an end tomorrow? That's interesting. Hadn't really thought about New Year's too much until I established that it was tomorrow's night, a bit earlier today. So I'm sure a lot of you will be planning big celebrations. For us, on the other hand, we'll be keeping it relatively tame due to the early start that we'll be having in the morning. But we will certainly have a celebration of some description. We're not sure exactly what to do yet, but we'll work something out. Ooh. Just going to leave you with a pretty view of this tree in front of us here, torchwood tree. It is one of my favorite trees, the torchwood. Especially this specific one, while I get my jackets on and have a short comfort break. So it'll just be a minute or two that we will be here while we stretch our legs. And shortly after this we will be heading on to the hyena den site, so don't go anywhere. Okay, we're back. Boy. It's important to try and stretch the legs every now and then. Being seated for 3 hours solid is not an ideal situation to be in. So Excuse us for that short break we've had, but it is kind of a necessity. A lot easier to be on and off the vehicle when there are guests on board. You tend to find tracking being easier when you do have a tracker and actual guests on board than we do when it's in this scenario with you guys that aren't actually here. So I don't spend as much time off the vehicle as we typically would, and typically also on every drive about halfway through you would stop for a coffee in the morning or a tea, or in the evening a beer or a gin and tonic, a glass of wine, an amarula on the rocks, which you guys may certainly help yourselves to in the comfort of your own homes. But for us, sadly, we are not going to be doing any of that just yet. Come on, the hyena. Provide us with some good news for this afternoon. It'll be interesting to see what the road's like down here, because it does have one or two interesting spots along it. Let's hope we don't get stuck. Brian just said there's only 7 minutes left, and I don't know how that's possible because my watch says that there's 15 more, but I'm sure you'll have an answer for me shortly. Okay, good. You looked at the incorrect dial or countdown timer there. So it is still 15 minutes, which is good news. But what is not good news is that sadly the hyena den site seems to still be uninhabited rather. And they could well just be at another one not far from here. We haven't managed to locate exactly where the other den could be, but it probably won't be too far from here. The tricky thing is that there's a myriad of drainage lines here that prevents us from easily searching through this area. So a combination of the riverbeds and the thick vegetation, we haven't been able to find where they do live now. But nice to just double check that they aren't here, and there is only one way to do that, and that is to come here and check. Okay. Well, I am going to take you guys to a beautiful spot now where we can hopefully see the last little remains of the sunset. It hasn't been hugely dramatic because there have been a lot of clouds blanketing the sun, but we will make our way to a pretty spot which is quite elevated and will hopefully allow us to see a fair amount of the remainder of the sunset. It is ironic how we so often say cool weather is good for viewing cats, and it certainly is, but the luck is not with us today, and there have been some extremely hot days where we've been fortunate enough to manage to follow cats and have some great sightings. But that is the way of the wild. It varies every day, and sadly luck hasn't been hugely on our side today in terms of the predators, but it has provided us with some very interesting other sightings. So I particularly enjoyed seeing the hornbill fly up to its nest this afternoon. That was exciting for me. Sad start to the drive, realizing that the nest with the 4 white-crowned shrikes chicks in them has not made the storms that we've just been through, and the chicks, I'm guessing, were ejected from the nest in heavy winds. Copy that, thank you, Brian. Well, sadly, the view that I was hoping for is not really here. So we will possibly just spend the last 10 minutes watching these impala, for lack of a better plan. It is common for impala to seek refuge in these open clearings, especially as night begins to fall. It makes it very difficult for any predators to sneak up on them when they do have the security of an open clearing. But as you can imagine, if they were in thick vegetation, especially when it's a bit windy like it is this afternoon, the sound of the leaves rustling will muffle the approach of predators, and they're aware of this. Antelope are notably more skittish in the windy weather because they're losing that sense of hearing that they can so often use to detect predators sneaking up on them. So that's one aspect that they'll be avoiding by being out in this open clearing, and the second aspect would be that obviously there's a lot less cover for predators to use to sneak up on them. Having said all of the above, though, they are still very alert and they can't take any chances, so you will see that they do prick their heads up quite intently every now and then. It's little sounds that they may have heard. Frogs and crickets are really beginning to call now, which is wonderful. I'm hoping you're picking up this audio. The young impala really are growing quickly. It's hard to gauge and monitor their growth, especially if you're out here every day seeing them growing slowly day by day. But if we could show you an image of these same youngsters 3 weeks ago, they'd be, I'm guessing, half the size they are now. Basically, in terms of body size, they wouldn't be twice as tall, but definitely their body size has increased dramatically. Their spindly little legs are quite long from the get-go. But they are growing very quickly, and that's why they are given birth to at this time of the year. There's plentiful food around, not only for them to feed on, but also for their mothers to feed on when they are heavily reliant on milk, which they still will be, these youngsters. They are mixing their food already, but they still will be highly reliant on their mother's milk, which they will get a lot of important nutrients for growing. Well, folks, it's just a few minutes left, so from myself and Viam and Brian on control this afternoon, I'd just like to say thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. I'm glad that we managed to get 2 drives in today, as my previous 4 attempted drives, only one of which I managed to do. The other 3 were all rained out, so this is my first day in a while that I've managed to be out both drives, and it really does make a difference for us to be immersed in this bushveld daily in order to keep a finger on the pulse as to what the animals are doing. So good to be back out, and I'm hoping tomorrow the weather's going to clear for Mark, who's up tomorrow, and that's something to look forward to, that Mark will be driving tomorrow. Myself will not be driving. But thank you very much for joining us. It has been a quiet afternoon, but despite the fact we didn't see any major events, we did see some interesting little things, and it is always good just to be out here. And just the beautiful vista we saw at one stage was for me a beautiful thing to see, because that's certainly not the views we get every day. And yeah, from myself, Brian and Viam, thanks very much. I'm not sure who will be cameraman and on control tomorrow, but I do know that Mark will be presenting. So from myself, thank you very, very much. Thanks for all the questions. I really enjoyed them today. And until next time, which could well be in 2015 from myself, I hope you have a great afternoon and a great New Year celebration if I don't see any of you tomorrow. And we'll just leave you on these Impala for the last few minutes, and hopefully something runs out and starts chasing them, but if not, just enjoy the Impala's last few little minutes before it gets dark.